everyone. No, I am not Tom Morrow. I am Jack White, and we're turning the tables a little bit on our normal host. Mr. Morrow is in the hot seat over here, and today we are going to talk about him being a living legend, and he truly is. Tom and I spent a couple of hours over lunch a week ago, and I got to know a little bit more about a man that I've known for years and years, and I found some pretty fascinating things out about this man's life. You were born in a small Iowa town. Tell us about that.
Centerville, Iowa, April 11th, 1939. It's right in the southern part of the state. I grew up 18 miles west of there in a little town called Seymour. But it's about 80 miles south of Des Moines, right on the Missouri border.
You told me that as a young man growing up there, a teenager, you knew pretty much that you didn't want to shovel snow all of your life.
The only thing I ever wanted out of Iowa was me. And the day after I graduated from high school in 1958, I was on a train to San Diego, California as a member of the United States Navy.
Before we leave Iowa, let's talk about one young man that you grew up with that has become rather prominent, world famous.
The first famous person that I ever encountered in my life, and of course I've encountered a lot of them over the years. In our business we do that. I was a freshman in high school, and we played Centerville, the town I was born in, but it was the big town, and we always tried to beat the other guys. Kid was a senior at that year. His name was Simon Estes. Now, Simon Estes has gone on to become a world-class opera singer. People who are in the operatic arts or love those type of things would know Simon Estes. I mean, he's world-renowned. He lives in Switzerland today, but he was just a skinny kid playing basketball back when I was playing basketball, and his dad was a porter over at the Continental Hotel in Centerville.
We're going to ask Angela, our director, to put up a picture here that I think you're going to find rather interesting of Tom, taken about, I think, age 4 or 5, somewhere along there.
That was right before I started school. Back I think the war was still going on. It was about 1945.
Good-looking young guy and all of that. You have always been pretty much in love with baseball. You like baseball.
Actually, baseball was something that I acquired a taste for when I moved to San Diego. I forced myself to like baseball, but football, basketball, and track was really my sports. But baseball was something that I endured, and then, of course, when you come to San Diego, if you don't love the Padres, there's just something wrong with you.
That's right.
Yeah,
you are truly out in left field.
Yeah.
All right, we have a picture of you as a baseball player or a lover, or actually basketball.
Yeah,
I guess.
Basketball. Yeah, I was a.
Now that's a pretty young and thin Tom Morrow there.
I was a sophomore in high school when that was taken.
All right, you came to San Diego and you joined the Navy, or you were actually in the Navy when you got to San Diego.
Yeah.
Did you know then that this was going to be home someday, San Diego County?
I knew growing up as a kid, it was something about, when you in those cold winter nights and everything, and you saw the sun setting in the west when it wasn't cloudy, and you could see the sun setting in the west, I just knew there was a better life, and I always looked west, never looked in any other direction. I always knew it was going to be out west. And ironically, I took boot camp in San Diego. I went back east for a short time. I went to radar school at Brunswick, Georgia, NAS Glencoe, and became an airborne radar operator. And flew on the forerunner of the plane that just got shot down or got forced down in China. In those days, they were called the WV-2. Flew on those for 4 years in the Navy in Guam and in Hawaii. And then after I got out of the Navy, I went back to Iowa, and I was okay until the frost got on the pumpkin, as they say. And by January, I was headed west, and I was actually headed for Los Angeles, but I didn't get any further than Phoenix.
Tell us about Phoenix. You became a police officer in Phoenix.
When I got to Phoenix, I looked up some old high school chums, and the first question out of one of them's mouth was, are you looking for a job? And I said, yeah, that's why I'm out here. And I said, well, come on, we'll see what we can do. And I got a job making $1.75 as a meat cutter. Now, they just assumed that I knew how to cut meat because my dad was a meat cutter. So naturally, I would know
Sure.
how, And of course, being, like I was going to Hollywood. Of course I can do that. Like most guys say, well, of course I can ride a horse. But anyway, I did. I cut meat for a while, and in about 3 months' time, the city of Phoenix put out a plea. They needed 25 new police officers, and I took the test, and out of 278 applicants, I was one of the 25 they chose.
You then went to journalism school during the off hours that you were not a police officer.
Yeah, after I was on the police department for about 6 months, they came out with a special squad. They wanted to kind of cut down on the high crime in the evenings, and so they said, look, we're going to form 2 flying squads, one on the east side, one on the west side, and if you take this job, your shift will not change. It'll be from 6 o'clock in the evening to 2 o'clock in the morning, and for those of you who want to go to school, you can go to school. So I graduated from Phoenix College, then went on over to Arizona State, and graduated from Arizona State University.
Do you think having been a police officer, been on active duty, gave you a different insight when you became a journalist and had to write about crime and police stories?
Well, one thing right off the bat is I knew how to write a lead, right in Reporting 101, because when I was going through the police academy, the man that they had teaching police report writing was the police beat reporter for the Phoenix Gazette. He came in and he says, all you need to know is to be a good writer, a report writer, is know how to write a good lead. And he gave us the who, what, where, why, and when, taught us how to write the lead. And so I became a good police report writer. A lot of the sergeants and lieutenants complimented me for being able to write a concise description of what happened. And then when I got to journalism school, I got A's in that part of it.
First job in a newspaper, where was that at?
Bend, Oregon. That's right in the central part of Oregon.
Ski resort area, isn't it?
Yeah, Bachelor Butte. And in fact, I'd been there 1 week, and I still had my Arizona clothes. They were very thin, and it was quite cold. It was in the dead of winter. It was January, and
you had a unique neighbor in Bend, Oregon.
Well, it wasn't in Bend. That was a little later on in Baker. But my first assignment in Bend was I created it myself. I discovered that John Lindsay was in town to ski, and nobody was supposed to know that he was there. And for those who don't remember John Lindsay, he was the mayor of New York at the time. He's the one that coined the phrase "fun city."
Sometimes a controversial.
Yes, he was very controversial. He was a very moderate, very liberal Republican. There weren't many of those around today, but he was in Bend, and
you got an interview.
I got an interview, a very short interview, and the only thing I can remember about that interview is he had bad teeth. He had bad teeth.
And then you picked up another quick interview there that was the next week, did you not?
Yes, it was Governor Claude T. Kirk, governor of Florida. He had come into town. The fact that he was the first Republican to be elected governor of Florida since Reconstruction, he automatically assumed that he was presidential material, so he was running for president. And he was there the week after John Lindsay. John Lindsay was just there to ski. Claude T. Kirk comes in, feeling out whether there was any possibilities he might get a few votes. And the week after that, it was Bobby Kennedy came to town, and I interviewed all 3 of them.
Now, your editor had to be kind of impressed with all 3 weeks having pretty good front page stories.
Yeah, and of course the fact that I was a former cop, they kind of leaned on me a little harder than the average young guy coming out of journalism school, because I had a little bit more experience. I'd been in the Navy 4 years, I'd been on the police department 4 years, got my degree, and so it was.
You knew how to search out good stories.
Yeah.
All right, then you went to Baker, Oregon.
Yeah, Baker, Oregon. Yeah, that's an interesting place.
And that's where you had the interesting neighbor.
It's we can say east of the Cascades.
Uh-huh.
And when I got to town, I found Harv Presnell living on one side of me and Lee Marvin living on the other. Paramount Studios had moved to town, almost lock, stock, and barrel, for the movie Paint Your Wagon. Lee Marvin and his wife, they moved to town for 6 months, so they rented houses fully furnished from the local residents there. And Harve Presnell, a lot of people wouldn't recognize Harve Presnell today as he was back then. He was the leading singer. I mean, he was kind of the Howard Keel of those days. He had hair. Mm-hmm. Today, you'll recognize Harve Presnell as being the father of Miss Parker on The Pretender. Yeah. Mr. Parker, and he's the bald-headed guy, but that's Harve Presnell. He has a wonderful voice. You would swear to God it was Howard Keel singing.
Ray Walston was also part of that
Ray
cast.
Walston was part of the cast. Bob Easton, one of the world's great linguists. Ray Walston would come over to our house and have supper with us. I won't say dinner because it was usually hamburgers and hot dogs, but he hated eating out in restaurants, and he just loved my young daughter. She was only about 9 months old at the time, and used to just love to sit and hold her and play with her and come over to our house and have a hamburger. Of course, he didn't mind the fact that I wrote a story about him every once in a while, but this is a little town of about 9,000 people. So.
Now, they wrecked the whole town that's a set for the movie, in the end of the movie, a big musical number.
It was the set was built up in up outside of Halfway, Oregon, which is right on the Snake River. And it's true. It was on Bureau of Land Management. It was in the National Forest. Mm-hmm. And they built this town. It was a gold mining town. And within 2 weeks after the movie finished shooting, it was completely leveled and put back in the original condition. And somebody had the foresight to save some of the set pieces. And today you go up there in Baker, they call it now Baker City, and it's right off of Interstate, I think it's 84, and you can see part of this old town is still as a tourist attraction.
Now, when the movie company left Baker, there wasn't much there to report on.
No, the only thing that I had left, it was a daily newspaper, 5 days a week. I did the editing, I did the writing, the reporting, I did the photography, I did the lab work in the photography. I went in the dark room and did that.
And you cleaned up after the...
And sometimes I did paste up, and then we would have the paper printed in LeGrand, Oregon. But there wasn't a lot to do. The only other thing that was left was Wayne Morris. Senator Wayne Morris was running for his life against a young guy by the name of Bob Packwood. Mm-hmm. And
Wayne Morris was the governor.
Well, no, Wayne Morris was a senior senator, mm-hmm. and he had been a Republican and then changed to be an independent, and then he became a Democrat. And this was in 1968, and of course that's the year that Nixon brought in a lot of Republicans with him. And Bob Packwood ran against Wayne Morris, which was thought to be unheard of. I mean, nobody was going to beat Wayne Morris. Packwood beat him by about 3,600 votes. And Packwood carried Baker County by 3,500 votes, which my newspaper was the biggest one in the county, and I was the editor.
And you editorialized, obviously.
Oh yeah, and Packwood always gave me credit for him winning the election because I carried that normally Democratic state or county.
Very interesting. After Baker, where'd we go?
I got tired of that cold winter. I quickly realized that the reason I left Iowa was to get out of that darn cold. And you can only put on chains with your bare hands so many times.
Yes.
Mom always told you not to forget your gloves, but I always forgot my gloves, and shoveling snow was not my forte. So I went on vacation to Phoenix to see my folks over Christmas holiday. And while I was there, I just happened to walk into the Associated Press office, and they hired me for $5 a week more than I was making in Baker, and I knew that the heating bill would be much less in Phoenix, so I couldn't wait to get back to Phoenix.
How did we wind up in San Diego County?
San Diego was always on my mind, and it was something that every summer, anybody that's ever lived through a Phoenix summer knows that there's better places to be, and probably the best place to be is in San Diego County. So every summer I was always finding excuses to come over to San Diego for a weekend or a week or whatever. And I had started a daily newspaper over there that I was running for about 6 years, and unfortunately I had gone through a divorce, and I didn't really have a reason to stick around anymore. We'd sold the newspaper, and my divorce was final, and I decided I wanted a new life, so I remembered San Diego, and that's how I got over here.
There are a lot of little things in between that I know that you did when you came to San Diego, but there are some names that I'm going to throw out. You went to work for the Hotel del Coronado. Larry Lawrence. He ran the Hotel del. Interesting man, and I know...
We don't have enough time for me to tell the many stories I have about Larry Lawrence.
Well, I remember when you first went to work for Larry Lawrence, there was one thing he wanted to do, and that was take and cool down some of the publicity that was going on a new hotel being built across in San Diego. Doug Manchester was building a new hotel, and he wanted you to come up with some plan to take the steam out of that opening.
Well,
and you did.
If I tell this story, I'll probably never be forgiven by the Manchester people who were trying to build that hotel down here in Oceanside. But Scott Anderson told me, okay, the old man wants you, Mr. Lawrence, wants you to take the spotlight away from Doug Manchester. They were not very good friends,
yes.
he and Lawrence. But he says he wants you to take the spotlight away from Manchester on his opening of the Intercontinental. It was the first half of that big structure over there. I said, well, give me a couple of days. Let me think and see what I can come up with. Well, I remembered when I was in boot camp here in 1958, there was a movie being shot. It was called Some Like It Hot. Billy Wilder's movie, and with Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Marilyn Monroe. So I counted up the years, and it had been 26 years. I think this is 1984. Been 26 years since the release of that, or since the filming. But I thought, well, wait a minute. We could do a 26 years doesn't make it, but 25th anniversary, there's something magic to that. I thought, well, it's been 25 years since the release because it was released in 1959. So, okay, let's do 25th anniversary reunion, and I invited all the actors, anybody that was involved in that movie. That, by the way, is the beginning of all these reunion movies that are being done today. I mean, I don't know how many have been done around the world, but
I attended that event.
You did?
And everybody in Hollywood was there.
And everybody in the media in San Diego was there.
Absolutely.
And I was told that poor Doug had to buy all the dinners for his big function because he couldn't get anybody in the media to attend. Well, we had 500 people of who's who.
Filled that ballroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it well.
It was probably the biggest stunt that I ever pulled. And we had Billy Wilder come down, Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Mike Migursky. The old wrestling fans will remember Mike. He was always the heavy. And there's a funny story about that one. I invited everybody that I could that I knew how to get a hold of that was involved with the movie. And there was a young lady called Kathy Lee Brown. We know her as Kathy Lee Gifford today, but
yes.
She was on the Good Morning America, and she was talking about going out to this fabulous party for Some Like It Hot, the 25th anniversary of Some Like It Hot. She'd been invited out, and she was talking about this on Good Morning America. And I get this call about 5 minutes later, and it's an agent in Los Angeles, and she says, my name is Michelle Migursky, and my father wants to know why he wasn't invited. And I said, Mike Migursky? And she said, yes. And I said, my God, I am so embarrassed, but I was told your father was dead. And she starts laughing. She says, no, he's very much alive, and he's kind of PO'd right now. And I said, give me his phone number. So I called him, and he answered the phone. And I said, Mr. Migursky, I'm Tom Morrow. I'm responsible for this. And I told him why. I mean, I was honest. I was told you were dead. And he, you know. We became great pals. He was a cigar smoker too, and we had a great time.
I could ask you a lot of questions about Larry Lawrence, but I won't.
Because they're all true.
I want to get you to Oceanside. We've got about 5 minutes left in this program, and there is so much to talk about. How did you wind up here at the? paper?
I went through a number of different jobs after I left the Hotel Dale. I ran my own PR firm for a while, and then I worked for an organization that had several newspapers. I was editorial director of that. I worked for the Vista Press for a while. I was very unhappy with, I was up in the desert managing 3 small newspapers and not very happy at it. And I just wanted to change, and I gave up a rather lucrative paying job at that time, just quit. And I was down here one day and I called Bill Missett, and he says, well, I've got a job, but he says, I'm embarrassed to offer it to you. And I says, does it pay more than unemployment? He says, well, yeah. I said, well, I want to work. And so, okay, fine. So I started out as a copy editor at the very bottom, making the very least amount of money they paid in the newsroom. And within 6 months, I was the business editor. And within a year, I started writing the column, aside from the business editor.
I'm going to throw some names out, people you've written about here in San Diego. Victor Mature.
Victor Mature, I did a feature story on him when I worked for the Old Times Advocate. Great guy. We spent 8 hours together. We both got so drunk that we drank ourselves sober. I mean, you had to drink when you were with Victor. He wouldn't talk unless he was drinking. And along the way, I had mentioned to him, because he told me these fabulous stories about him and Errol Flynn selling war bonds during the war, buying a taxi cab because transportation was tough. So they bought the two of them got a taxi cab, and they take turns wearing the hat, driving the cab around town, driving the other one. And I asked him, I said, well, on all this time, you made all this money and everything, do you ever consider yourself a superstar? Oh, my God, no. He said, I'm not a superstar. So I can remember the wording in the article. I said, though he never considered himself a superstar, Victor Mature is one of the most successful Hollywood actors, made more money than anyone else. A friend of his called me and says, Victor's really mad at you. And I said, why? He says, because you just said he wasn't a superstar. And I tried to explain to him, the friend was there at the interview, he said, I tried to explain to him, he just quoted you. But Victor never spoke to me again.
If I had to ask you, best job in the newspaper business you've ever had, where would it be?
I'm in it right now. I worked 30 years to get to the job that I'm in right now, and they're going to have to blast me out to get me out of this job.
The clock is our biggest enemy, Tom, and it's ticking fast. Toughest story you ever had to write?
No, several, mainly columns, obits about people that I knew that had passed on.
Paula Sullivan?
Paula Sullivan was one. You and I both knew Jim Cotton, my old partner.
Sure.
He was a tough one, and there's been several people, yeah.
All right. Most exciting story you've ever had to put together?
The best story I ever wrote that I think, in my mind, was a story that I wrote last year. It took me 5 months to get it printed. I wrote it in August, and it was printed on December 31st of 2000. It was the story of Bill Riart, who was a B-26 pilot, was shot down, ended up in Buchenwald concentration camp, finally got out okay, but it was a fascinating story. In fact, I had him on this show, interviewing him, and that's one of the best I've ever. I've had so many, I don't want to choose, but that one sticks in my mind.
Tom, you have had so many experiences and been able to share them rather vividly with people, not only on this program but through your column. We want to thank you because you are truly a living legacy to San Diego County.
Well, I think maybe more like a living curiosity than a living legacy.
Well, we look forward to more stories, more good columns, and more good programs. We want to thank you out there for taking the time to join us and for letting us put Tom Morrow in the hot seat and talk about his life as certainly a living legacy. Thank you.
This program is made possible through the generous underwriting grants of Hatter Williams and Purdy Insurance Services of Oceanside, providing North County with complete insurance needs for more than half a century. The TriQuest Corporation, providing quality office and manufacturing space in Oceanside. And the North County Times, serving all of North County with complete local daily news coverage and internet services.